Uh, our next bright star is Dr. Megha, who after a primary medical education at RCSM Government Medical College, Kolhapur, followed up with her post-graduation in Patna Medical College and pursued a fellowship in vitreoretina and uvea at LVPI, Visakhapatnam, and continued as a young faculty herein. Dr. Megha Gulati would help us understand things with a better perspective, delving into analytical and divergent thinking. On to you, Dr. Megha.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra, for such kind words and for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this conference of types of thinking. So today I will be taking you through another two types of thinking, that is analytical and divergent thinking. But before I do that, I would like to thank Anamika for explaining us the concrete and the abstract thinking. And to just reiterate before I start with my main topic. Now, the concrete thinking it is based upon physical facts and literal meaning without using concepts and generalizations. While abstract thinking, it is symbolic thinking. That is when you are trying to gather the information with all your senses and trying to make stronger connection. Like if you see the Statue of Liberty and someone tells you what it is, you just use a concrete thinking and say it's Statue of Liberty. But someone who has a good abstract thinking, observation skills and all, it will say that it signifies freedom and justice. So this is what the difference between the concrete and the abstract thinking. So myself, Megha Gulati, I will be taking you through next two types of thinking. And to start with, I will be discussing the analytical thinking. Now, before taking you through the clinical scenarios, so Anamika has used the example of choroidal neovascularization, retinal detachment, and endophthalmitis to help you understand the first two types of thinking. I and Prabjot will also be using all these three examples to continue with the next four types of thinking. But before I start with the clinical scenario proper, just to give you a glimpse of what analytical thinking is, now in a day-to-day clinical situation, I go to market and I wanted to buy a new dress. Now, whether I should buy this dress or not, how should I decide it? What do? I try to judge it based on its color, its material, whether it's stitched, unstitched, what is the size, brand, cost, discount, and all these things. And then I come to a conclusion whether I want to buy it or not. So the decision to buy it or not was made easy when I tried to judge this decision based on the key information which is available in this form. So this is what is analytical thinking. It is a step-by-step methodical approach where you try to solve a complex problem. So you have a complex problem. To divide the information, you take out the key information from the data, and then you try to analyze that key information. So breaking down the available information into parts and then coming to a conclusion. So why are we doing that? Now the complex problem can be solved quickly and effectively by doing this analytical thinking. Now let me take you through clinical scenarios to understand this. Now this image Anamika has also showed you, and then she told that using concrete thinking, it is a choroidal neovascularization. She was very right in saying that. There was no wrong in that. But let's see into detail what this fundus photo shows you. So there is this obvious subretinal grayish yellow membrane present at the macula, especially at the nasal macula involving the fovea. Then there is this subretinal hemorrhage. Now there is something more into it. Now if you see that there is this gray fine irregular line which is emanating from the disc, which is more prominently visible on this autofluorescence picture. Now this image has three important information. So we are trying to break down this fundus photo into three important points. So it has a subretinal grayish yellow membrane, it has subretinal hemorrhage, and there is this gray fine irregular line. Now, what does it point to? It is that it is a choroidal neovascularization secondary to angioid streak, right? Coming to the next case scenario. Now, oh my God. So seeing this fundus photo, you might get scared that what the diagnosis is. It looks so complex, but let's try to solve it very easily and effectively. Now, what is the most prominent finding that you can see in this fundus photo? It's this retinal detachment. Now let's analyze the retinal detachment itself. It has convex borders with smooth surface and it is seen inferiorly, that is, it is in dependent position. And I assume that there are no breaks. So most likely this retinal detachment is an exudative retinal detachment. So this was the prominent finding of this fundus picture. Now, what is this? This whitish lesion, what you can see superior to the disc and here also. So this is that subretinal fibrin, but it has a characteristic feature in that. Now, in this fibrin, you can see that there is central clearing which is there, right? And if you grossly look at the fundus photo, there is reduced tessellations. The background has reduced tessellations. So now this point points towards that this fundus has a pachychoroid. Now, what is the important information which this fundus photo gives you? That it has the exudative retinal detachment. There is this subretinal fibrin, which has a characteristic central clearing, and then we have a pachychoroid. Now, it becomes easy to come to a diagnosis. The subretinal fibrin with central clearing and pachychoroid points toward central serous chorioretinopathy. And when there is this exudative retinal detachment, that means we are dealing with a case of bullous central serous chorioretinopathy. So this complex problem became so easy in just seconds when we divided the information into different parts, right? Now, another example of endophthalmitis. Now, this image was shown by Anamika also, and then she also concluded that this is endophthalmitis by her concrete thought, right? Now, let's try to analyze it and try to gather the key information from this image. Now, there is conjunctival congestion and chemosis, which is there. Then we can see this temporal conjunctival incision pointing towards that a temporal SICS has been done in this patient. Now, the cataract surgery was done 1 week back in this patient. Now, here what we can see is that there is scleral infiltrate at the edges of the wound, which is there, as well as a corneal infiltrate at the wound can be seen, right? This hypopyon is present, and then we have a PCIOL and a fibrin membrane over it. And as the fundus was not visible, B scan shows low to medium amplitude dotted membrane is echoes in the anterior vitreous cavity with a normal retinochoroidal complex. Now, the diagnosis was well known that it's an acute postoperative endophthalmitis. But what does these three information point to? Now, patient has redness, pain, and blurring of vision since 7th postoperative day. Then we have a corneoscleral infiltrate, which is there. We have a hypopyon, and B scan is showing vitreous echoes. Now, it's an acute postoperative endophthalmitis, but with microbial keratitis, that is, there is a corneoscleral infiltrate. And seeing this clinical scenario, I can point out that most likely this endophthalmitis is caused by a high virulent organism. Now, why do I say so? Let me just give you 2 learning points with this clinical situation. When we suspect that endophthalmitis is caused by high virulent organism, whenever the onset of symptoms is within 2 days of surgery, when the initial vision at presentation is only perception of light, when there is loss of red reflex, when there is relative afferent pupillary defect present, or there is a corneal or cataract incision infiltrate as present in our case. Now, talking about this cataract incision infiltrate, how do we differentiate whether it is infective or immune mediated? Now, infective infiltrate will not have a clear space between limbus and the infiltrate. It will usually be full thickness of corneal involvement, and they will respond to antibiotics. While on the other hand, the non-infective or the immune infiltrate, they will have this clear space between the limbus and the infiltrate. It will be mostly initially the stromal involvement and not the full thickness. And then this immune infiltrate will respond to corticosteroids rather than antibiotics. So these were 2 important points. So now with the help of these 3 examples, I think I would have been able to make you understand what is analytical thinking. That is, we break down the information, we try to extract the key information from the data and try to solve the complex problem effectively and quickly, right? Now coming to the next type of thinking, that is divergent thinking. Now divergent, as the name suggests, it means the same. But before I take you through the divergent thinking proper, now as I went to a market previously and I was analyzing a particular dress, now I want to decide which dress should I buy. What all can come into my mind? Now these thoughts can vary from common dresses to uncommon dresses or to new creative dresses, right? So I can buy a salwar suit, a sari, skirt, dress, jeans, whatever I wish to. Now, whatever these thoughts come to my mind when I have a problem or I want to find a solution for a problem, all these options what come to my mind is what is called the divergent thinking. So this divergent thinking, it is very free flowing and continuous process. it involves creativity in it. So it's a free flowing, continuous, and a creative process. When you have a possible, when you think of possible solutions and differential diagnosis to a problem. So this is also a step-by-step methodical approach, but here you try to have your creativity in it, and then you think of common, uncommon, and new ideas. So with the same three examples, you will understand what is divergent thinking. Now, if you tell me that the patient has choroidal neovascularization, I will not stop there. I will think of what will be the cause for this choroidal neovascularization, and innumerable causes will come to my mind. It can be a central serous chorioretinopathy. Why I say in this patient? Because the patient has gravitational tracts, these RP changes with the subretinal hemorrhage. Now, it can be a myopic CNVM when we have this markedly tessellated fundus with a tilted disc with a peripapillary chorioretinal atrophy and focal and diffuse retinal atrophic patches with this large subretinal hemorrhage. Then in this patient, I can see that there is a peripapillary white membrane with subretinal fibrosis and then pigmented scars in the mid-periphery. Most likely it is a multifocal choroiditis, so it's an inflammatory CNVM. Then in this aged patient who is presenting with these multiple drusen's and a membrane at the macula, there is no doubt that this is wet age-related macular degeneration. Now in this patient on OCT angio, when I can see a net and the patient is having this perifoveal grain, it can be parafoveal telangiectasia. Then last but not the least, this patient, we have already seen this patient in our analytical thinking. But what these lines which are emanating from the disc, they are much more larger compared to our previous photo. And then we can also see this pudy orange appearance in the temporal macula, these white comet tail bodies, and then the macular dystrophy which is there. So now this is CNVM secondary to angioid streaks. But because of these characteristic other features which are present, and using the analytical thinking, I can come to a conclusion that this CNVM in an angioid streak patient is most likely secondary to pseudoxanthoma elastica. So thinking of CNVM, I thought of innumerable causes, and then I tried to analyze each fundus photo. Coming to the other example, exudative retinopathy. I will think of unlimited causes of exudative retinopathy, starting with this case where I have a subretinal focal inferior to the disc yellowish lesion with surrounding retinal edema or neurosensory detachment which is there, and retinal hemorrhages with a characteristic T sign on B scan. This is exudative retinopathy secondary to nodular posterior scleritis. Then this, no doubt in that, it's a Vogt-Koyanagi-Harada syndrome. Why I say so? Because it has multiple neurosensory detachment, hyperemic disc with RP undulations and these septae on OCT, which is characteristic of PKH syndrome. The other cause of exudative retinopathy can be this rare cause where patient is giving me the history that she had breast cancer, she was treated with chemotherapy and radiotherapy for the same 3 years back, and now is presenting with exudative retinopathy and this dome-shaped subretinal large lesion in the temporal macula extending till the mid-periphery. So this exudative retinopathy will most likely be due to choroidal metastasis. Then this clinical picture we have already seen in our analytical thinking, this exudative retinopathy with this multifocal leaks on angiogram and this RP rib. This is bullous central serous chorioretinopathy. Then this leopard spot appearance and exudative retinopathy makes me think of uveal effusion syndrome. Now this patient giving me the history that patient was lasered as in form of pan-retinal photocoagulation second setting 1 week back and is now having diminution of vision. This is exudative retinopathy, which might be most likely if the patient's systemic parameters are not under control or excessive power is used. So exudative retinopathy secondary to laser photocoagulation. So thinking of exudative retinopathy, we thought of multiple causes and then we tried to analyze each of them. Now, another example, as I told you, endophthalmitis will be our last example for divergent thinking. Now, if you tell me endophthalmitis, I will not stop there. I would like to know what is the type of endophthalmitis as it can be innumerable. So if there is this characteristic clinical picture in front of you with this ACIOL, which is popping out of this corneal incision. This is acute postoperative endophthalmitis. Now this PC plaque, what Anamika has shown you, is characteristic of delayed postoperative endophthalmitis. Now this patient having a corneal tear with the traumatic cataract and a hypopyon, most likely this hypopyon will be infective. I would like to do a B scan. So this is traumatic endophthalmitis. This patient was treated for traumatic endophthalmitis in form of intravitreal antibiotic injections and systemic antibiotics. The end of part resolved. But then this patient again presented with this hypopyon. Now this hypopyon is different from what the patient was having hypopyon prior. Now you can see that there are these refractile particles and you can see those crystals in it. I will label it as pseudoendophthalmitis. Now, why do I say so? A passing clinical pearl that pseudohypopyon has a ground glass appearance and these refractile particles can be seen. It has characteristic shifting position and you can see that the eye is quite compared to what it was previously. So patient was given intravitreal triamcinolone, which has come into the anterior chamber as the patient was partly aphakic. Now, we saw acute post-op endophthalmitis, delayed post-op endophthalmitis, traumatic endophthalmitis, pseudoendophthalmitis. Last but not the least, this patient presenting with a blood-tinged hypopyon with no history of trauma, no history of cataract surgery, and fundus examination shows me this pre-retinal exudates in the vitreous cavity, in the posterior and the mid-vitreous cavity. And then patient is giving history of having been operated for hernia 2 to 3 weeks back. Gives me a clue that this is endogenous endophthalmitis. So just thinking about endophthalmitis, I can think of innumerable causes or differential diagnosis. So exploring the many possible solutions or differential diagnosis to a problem or a challenging clinical case, which can vary from common to uncommon or new or creative ideas, is what is divergent thinking. So with the help of 3 examples of choroidal neovascularization, exudative retinopathy, and endophthalmitis, I hope I made you understand what is analytical and divergent thinking. Now, once we have a problem with us and we think of various options which are there, this is what I told you is divergent thinking. Now, when I try to analyze each of the solution or differential diagnosis I have is what is analytical thinking. Now, after analyzing it and breaking down the key information into different parts, when I come to a conclusion, this is what is convergent thinking. So here I would like to request and hand over to Prabjot, my colleague, to take you all through convergent and creative thinking. Thank you all.